Is it 10 o'clock? Is it 10 p.m.? Yes. Am I drinking a juvie? Yes, but it is because I am so hyped about this build crafting tour that they have drafted for us going into Lightfall that I simply cannot. I simply cannot. YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today is quite possibly the biggest day that I have experienced in Destiny 2. So as you guys know, I am a big build crafter in Destiny 2. I love getting in, playing with the different modifications and the different subclasses and all of that stuff, and really kind of tying it together to make it work and have fun with it and try new and different interesting things. Build the most powerful builds, sure, but also build the most fun. And I also think, however, even though I find build crafting a lot of fun, that it is one of the most complicated and kind of barrier to entry things that Destiny has to offer, which isn't necessarily uncommon in MMORPGs when it comes to things like this. But I think Destiny's has gotten just so bloated and so piecemealed together, and I think that's actually a term they use here, that it's become very, very hard to get into. And so people rely solely on channels like mine or like It's Dave TV's to put builds together for them. And I'm very excited about some of the changes that are coming in Lightfall in just a few weeks, because players will be able to get in a lot easier, put this stuff together a lot easier, and then you can actually build out into more complex things that I am excited to get my hands on because of the changes that are being made. But without further ado, yesterday Bungie released a new blog post that they titled Build Crafting Evolved. And we're gonna go through it just little by little and kind of break down some of the major things that are changing when it comes to build crafting in Lightfall for Destiny 2. So the TLDR is right at the top, and so we're gonna go over that just super quickly. So the first thing is consolidation. That's really what they want to do. Just like I said a second ago, this whole system was piecemealed together over the course of the last few years because they didn't really know exactly the end game when it came to build crafting and mods in Destiny. That's why we've seen a bunch of different combat mod systems like Warmind cells and elemental wells and charged with light and all of this other stuff. And they've essentially not scrapped all of those ideas, but they've taken all of those ideas and really condensed it down into a strong central idea that really, I think, is going to work. The loadout system empowers Guardians to suit up for whatever task on the fly. So there will be, and they've clarified this, there are 10 slots available per character to set your loadouts. And all of those things are going to be on a single screen in a loadout menu, similar to how our transmog system is now, and we'll get into that a little bit down below. That way it's easy to put together and easy to share those things with communities like us. Here is a big one. Champion mods are completely changing. The whole idea around champions is changing, how to combat them and all of that stuff. You and I both know that champions may be one of the worst things for the long game that they've added to in-game PvE content because of the strict structure that they essentially force you and railroad you into using to counter certain champion types. All of that is being completely changed, and I think it's in a good way. They're also updating the entire mod system, mainly focusing on combat mods to streamline the process of bringing new and exciting build potential into Destiny 2. They are touching and tuning every single mod in Destiny 2, and I think that's super important. They're no longer just taking, oh, we're gonna edit this, oh, Warmind spells, goodbye. They're taking a look at every single type of combat mod and general mod and all of that stuff, even artifact mods, and completely tuning them. That way it just makes more sense. They're also completely removing the energy type restriction on mods, which is a huge W. It's cost so much resources and time and headache to like swap energy types, not to mention the load it bears on our vaults to hold all of that types of armor. If you even went through the struggle of like going through and getting all these different types of armor in the first place, it just makes all of that so much more simple, and that's very, very exciting. They're also reducing the pressure on armor energy by retuning armor mod costs and changing artifact perks in general, because artifact perks will no longer take up space on your armor. They're also completely moving away from weapon type specific mods and going to damage type specific mods, which I think is going to be a little bit of a balancing act, but I'm excited to see how it actually plays out. Okay, let's talk loadouts in general. So the whole goal and the whole reason they're putting this together is so you can quickly swap entire sets of gear completely on the fly, and they put it here without having to open a second screen. You won't have to open them. They could have just said it. I don't know why they didn't, but it also decreases the time in between play sessions. That way you don't have to completely rebuild a loadout. Like I said, if you don't keep multiple sets of armor, which really only top level players or streamers tend to do in order to swap quickly, if you don't do that, it could take ages to make sure you get the right armor pieces in the right spots, and then you got to go through and completely change all of your mods. Having this stuff in game will completely change the time commitment to altering your mods, because even I don't like to do that. I have my stuff preset in dim, but if I don't have a build set in dim, that way I can one tap it, I'm probably just going willy-nilly into the world. So this is a big change. They're also going to let you create labels, that way you can quickly identify those things. So you can see here that you've got like a blue void logo, or this one's purple, and you can quickly identify what is what on those things. You'll notice there are only 5 options here, but we'll get into that in just a second as far as the loadouts are concerned. I said 5, I meant 6. This particular Guardian has 6 loadout slots that they have unlocked. You'll be able to unlock all of your slots just by progressing through the new Guardian rank system, which we won't get into here. But essentially, the longer that you play the game and just do certain things and learn more about the game, you'll be able to have all of your slots unlocked, which is nice. And it says here that every label you can do with different colors and icons. That way you can put the Crucible logo on one if that is your go-to PvP loadout, or a Gambit loadout if that is your thing and you're not like the rest of us and completely hate Gambit. But you can do that too if that's your thing. But it's really cool here because it gives you a preview as well. You can see here that it tells you your subclass, exactly what aspects you're using, all of that stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. It even gives you a preview into what weapons you're holding in there, what perks they have, all of that stuff. It is fantastic. I'm really excited to get my hands on this. I really hope that it works the way that it looks like it's going to. Okay, let's talk mods specifically, because there's some big changes here and some that they actually gave us a little sneak peek into. So the whole idea around the mod tuning, they want to decrease the time spent on managing mods and moving stuff around, because the more time you're doing that, the less time you're actually playing their game. And so they wanted to cut down on that. They wanted to remove those limitations. We talked about the elemental specific things. They wanted to completely take all that down because they want to make build crafting quick and fun for everybody, not just hardcore players like me. They want to give players a more understandable way to earn mods, because frankly, there isn't one right now, and it's so frustrating to have to wait for 801 to rotate through 4 mods a day, hoping you get the right one. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck without powerful friends for 5 years and not be able to use it. I'm sorry. I'm just very upset, but I'm so glad this is changing. They are removing the need to wait for 801 to randomly sell a specific mod. That was the stupidest thing that they've done in regards to PvE/build crafting. And it's, oh my God, I'm so glad it's going away. I hate her so much. Okay, sorry about that. And they're retuning mods to give players more forms of expression, is how they put it. Essentially, they're wanting to tamper down on power creep by retuning mods, and they've given us some insight here. So for example, the +10 resilience mod is now 4 energy cost instead of 3. And it's gonna be a lot of little fine tuning things like that. You know, I mean, your plus small tuning things like that. For example, your +5 resilience mod is 2 energy, but your +10 discipline is going to be 3, your +5 is going to be 1, and it just gives you a little more option when it comes to that stuff. And you're really going to have to think about exactly how you want to use the energy slots you have. Big W in my opinion. There is also another new mod customization screen. That way you can see everything in real time. So this screen, you can actually see what mods you have equipped, how much energy you have here left on each individual armor piece, and how it's affecting your stats. You can see down here, they've also, by the way, just a fun fact, leaked next season's seasonal artifact, just throwing that out there, and 1800 power confirmed. This one is actually kind of neat, not something I imagine that I will find myself using too terribly much, but I may be wrong about that. But you can actually hit the bumper, or your C key probably, and move over into your weapon customization as well. That way you can see what perks and stats your weapons have, all within the same character screen, which is a nice little touch, and I'm glad they're doing it now instead of like not doing it and then we all asking for it and they're doing it a year from now. So that's cool. Okay, earning mods. What that outburst was about a second ago. No longer are you gonna have to wait for 8 of 1, but you're actually going to get access to mods as you progress through the Guardian rank system. So essentially, the longer you play the game, the more you learn about the game and delve into the world of Destiny 2, the more mods you're gonna unlock. And I do not hate this at all. Most of us who've played the game for a long time will start at rank 6 or so, and so we will have all of the mods already unlocked. It says right here that you get everything at rank 6, everything will be done. And so most of us who are starting already will have access to those. The thing is, if everyone got them all at once, it would absolutely confuse new players and frankly run more people off than it, brought in. So I'm glad that they're doing that actually. They talk also a little bit here about the different elemental pieces. They're completely doing away with that. So they're reducing the energy cost of many combat style mods. That way we can mix and match a lot more, which I am excited about. I hope that that carries over into a lot of other things that they're looking for. I want more flexibility in Destiny 2's game loops and things like that. So I hope that that really carries over well. And I do have faith that it will, just based on the rest of this thing. So armor mods that previously provided benefits to weapons on their archetype, like a hand cannon, will now actually provide benefits to weapons based on their damage type. So it levels the playing field for all of your weapon archetypes. That way you don't have to, spend a lot of time swapping into hand cannon loaders or pulse rifle loaders or whatever. And it should make it easier to put together that powerful suite of mods to benefit multiple weapons within your loadout. So all of your void weapons, for example. So here is also a big thing for me. Artifact mods are being translated to unlockable perks, and they will no longer need slotted in your armor. It completely eliminates the need to slot these artifact mods in your armor that take up so much space and so much energy in your armor, most of it coming in your class item, which where all the cool stuff lived anyway. And once you earn it and pick it, it is passively unlocked for your entire loadout. It is awesome. So this gives the example. So let's say anti-barrier weapon of the season is pulse rifles. It may not be, it's just an example. The change means that you no longer need to equip the mod for anti-barrier pulse rifles because it takes up space and energy. Instead, all of your pulse rifles, unless it has an inherent like anti-unstoppable, whatever, all of your pulse rifles will be anti-barrier intrinsically. Now you still will only be able to pick 12 out of the artifact to have active at any given time, so you can't have like all of them all the time because that would be insane. But you get to pick any 12 that you want, and those are the 12 that are active. What an incredible system. I had the question, it popped up immediately as I was reading these things. Well, what about Artifice Armor? I know. What about Artifice Armor? In Lightfall, Artifice Armor will now have a unique mod slot that grants 3 additional points to your character stats, strength, mobility, whatever. And that just kind of helps you round out your stat numbers. So I'm excited to see how that plays in regards to the rest of the builds, because they're definitely dampening the power creep in one area, but I think that kind of helps it in another, but is so much harder to get in theory. It won't be quite the power creep that a lot of the other stuff has been. All right, for gameplay wise, they're essentially just removing match game from high-end activities. I don't hate that because again, anytime you're absolutely steamrolled into using a specific damage type or a specific archetype of weapon, you lose me. I enjoy build crafting because it's fun and flexible. Railroading us into using a void pulse rifle is so annoying, and they finally have listened to that, and so all of that's going away. They're going to talk more about that closer to launch. I think it has to do with, the raid's going to be coming out very close to launch, obviously. And so they don't want to give out too much too quick, which I totally understand, but helping us synergize our perks and abilities around a single damage type as opposed to having to pull for example, a solar fusion rifle and void machine gun in order to make our way through a raid to the best of our ability, or a Grandmaster Nightfall and pray that we don't run into something that we don't have access to or whatever. That's the goal, and I'm very, very excited about that. Okay, as we said, champions may be the worst thing that they've done in regards to PvE content, mainly because, again, forcing us to use a specific weapon in a specific instance. I hate it, and they're finally doing away with it to the majority, to the majority side of things. So instead of just using those anti-champion artifact mods, we'll also be able to do things like use our subclass specific traits in order to counteract champions. Big plus in my opinion. So barrier champions, you've got Solar, Void, and Strand will have a counter. So volatile rounds and radiant attacks will pierce champion shields and stun them. And then Strand will have one once we figure that, out. Overloads, Arc, Stasis, and Void all have counters. So suppressing those targets, jolting those targets, or using Stasis all stun them. And unstoppable champions have actually 4 counters. Arc, Solar, Stasis, and Strand will have one when it comes out. Blinding and Unstoppable Champion is an instant stun, and I really like that one specifically because you obviously can get that in weapons as well. Encasing them in Stasis and shattering it, or a Solar Ignition and Strand's counter. All of those things stun and lock an Unstoppable Champion, and I'm so excited about that. Okay, Armor Charge mod. So really, this is getting into combat mod stuff. That entire socket is completely going away, and a lot of mods that slotted into there, like Charge with Light, Elemental Wells, are actually going under a completely revamped combat mod system called Armor Charge. And a lot of those mods have been moved to armor slot specific sockets like legs or arms or whatever. And the mechanic is actually pretty interesting. So socketing an armor mod that uses any Armor Charge system essentially activates the system for your loadout. You will gain the ability of taking charge just intrinsically by having any of those equipped. So we've been asking for Elemental Well nerfs for quite some time because it is the single most ridiculous thing in game right now. They've taken a lot of those mods, and instead of dropping Elemental Wells, they now drop Orbs of Power. I think that's a nice power shift in the game, and so I'm excited to see kind of how that plays out. And that really takes place a lot of the combat mod stuff. That we've been using so far. So inherently, without any messing with it, you can hold anywhere from 0 to 3 stacks of Armor Charge. And it'll show up in the status effect screen in like the bottom left. I'm still concerned about the UI there. I think it is still getting just too much, and we've done nothing but add another thing to it. That's another conversation for a different day. You can actually socket a mod in your chest piece that will allow you to carry up to 6 of these charges. Now, a lot of the mods that we've become used to using right now will grant things like passive effects in our build if we have the ability active, the charge ability active. And if they're not consumed by something, they do fall off every 10 seconds, which means you can't just constantly be charged, which is a good thing. Again, we don't want to get too powerful too quickly. I think this is going to dampen it a little bit. And there are things to extend that timer, right? An extended charge mod in your class item will take that 10 seconds and actually increase it. I imagine it will be up to 15 seconds because that's how those things usually work in Destiny. And they gave a really good example here where Font of Wisdom in your head socket will provide a bonus gain to intellect while you have any Armor Charge active. They've gone a lot to more passive ability stuff, it seems like, in this system, and I don't think that's a bad thing, especially with the decay of the Armor Charge itself. And they also go ahead and say that a few other mods, and they give examples like Powerful Friends, Radiant Light in your head socket, can modify the whole system for you without actually providing a specific benefit, but they're not really diving into that yet, and I'm pretty stoked to see exactly what they mean there. Finishers will now consume those armor charges instead of dipping into your super energy. Things that like say, oh, we'll take a third of your super energy and it will drop special brick for you, will now actually take an X number of those armor charges away instead of your super energy. And that is a big plus to me. Thank goodness Elemental Wells are finally getting a rework. So instead of using those mods to generate Elemental Wells, they'll now, like I said, generate orbs for the most part. And those Elemental Wells are being transformed into something that is subclass specific. So for example, we have Ionic Crisis for Arc, and we all kind of felt that that's where that was going in regards to them testing Ionic Traces in this new Arc subclass to kind of see how it plays in the mechanic of it. And they're taking that and extending it into the other subclass types. Fire Sprite for Solar, Void Breaches for Void, Stasis Shards are still going to be there, and Strand will have something when it comes out. But essentially, it's how Ionic Traces work. However, the ability to spawn these objects are not coming from any armor mods at all, but are from our subclass specifically. Gives the example that while Ember of Tempering Fragment is active for Solar Hunters, it creates Fire Sprites when you defeat an enemy with a solar weapon, similar to how Ionic Traces work. And they all work similarly, like picking them up grants ability energy or other defects depending on how your subclass is built out. So I'm going to call this subclass evolution like a Arc Solar Stasis 3.1. Because it also gives the example like the Ember of Mercy Fragment, when you pick up a Fire Sprite, grants you the restoration effect. So a well of life essentially built in. So I'm curious to see how kind of splitting that up into the different subclasses works, because as you guys know, I'm a big fan of really throwing well of life on most of anything because it is such a good mod. So I'm curious to see how this is going to work within a fire team, not just as a solo player. It's going to be fun to watch, which is what they're talking about here, a balancing act. The main focus here was to streamline the build crafting experience for everybody. They also had to do a bunch of tuning because otherwise this power creep thing gets crazy out of control. They touched everything. They moved things to different slots, transitioned to other abilities like moving it to the subclass, completely removed, like they completely removed the Warmind cell thing. It's completely gone, as an example. They, you know, it's a relic of a different time is what they said. And no, this has nothing to do with Rasputin maybe dying at the end of this season. It's just part of the video game build crafting process. It just had to go. Rasputin and Warmind cells were never really connected in lore, so please just let that go. None of you use them anyway, just leave it alone. So they also said very upfront that not all builds that we have used up until now will be able to be recreated one-to-one. In fact, this build guide that I just put out the other day probably won't be around once Lightfall drops, which is super exciting for me because that gives a whole new window and a whole new era of build crafting that I cannot wait to be a part of. And just like always, they're very upfront that this is just a stepping stone right now, and they will be evolving this over time. However, they have a central theme, idea, and identity to Destiny 2 build crafting that they can build around and up, not just putting puzzle pieces together like they have been, and essentially hoping for the best. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let me know down below if you think this is going to work or how you think this is going to actually play out come Season 20, Destiny 2 Lightfall. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!